blade. Friends, if you want to watch the super hit movie Blade, 1998, in English, then make sure to like this video. And if you're visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more amazing movie updates. Friends, in today's video, the movie we are going to talk about is called Blade, 1998. We will talk about what this movie is, where you can watch it, and share all the interesting facts related to this film. In today's video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know, including which OTT platform or satellite channel you can watch this movie on. We'll also discuss in detail the technical department, music department, pre-production, filming, post-production, budget, and box office collection of this film. Not only that, we'll talk about the storyline of this film, and I'll also give you a short review of the plot. Along with that, we'll explore fascinating facts, the full star cast, actors' performances, and which actors played which role in the movie. That's why I request you, friends, to watch this video till the end for all the details. So without wasting any more time, the narrative of Blade, 1998, unfolds as a stylized action horror hybrid that combines superhero mythology with vampire lore. Directed by Stephen Norrington and written by David S. Goyer, the film follows a mostly linear storytelling structure, yet it immerses viewers into a dark, atmospheric world from its very first frame. Opening sequence, setting the tone. The film opens with a cold, chilling flashback to 1967, where a pregnant woman, Vanessa Brooks, is bitten by a vampire. She is rushed to the hospital, where a baby is born prematurely. That child is Blade, a half-human, half-vampire hybrid known as a Daywalker. This short prologue sets the emotional and mythological foundation of the film. Blade's birth is both tragic and supernatural, an origin defined by trauma and mutation. The narrative then shifts to the present day, launching immediately into a blood-soaked vampire rave scene, one of the film's most iconic sequences, where Blade emerges from the shadows as a ruthless hunter, showcasing his skills and hatred for vampires. Act 1, establishing characters and conflict. Blade is introduced not just as an action hero, but as a mythic figure feared by vampires. He is aided by his mentor and weapons maker, Abraham Whistler, who serves as both a father figure and moral compass. Together, they hunt vampires and attempt to suppress Blade's own thirst for blood using a serum. After rescuing Dr. Karen Jensen, a hematologist attacked by a vampire, Blade reluctantly brings her into his world. Karen becomes the audience surrogate, allowing the film to explain vampire lore, such as a hidden society, political hierarchy, and the blood god prophecy, through her perspective. The first act establishes a central antagonistic force in the form of Deacon Frost, a young, ambitious vampire who seeks to overthrow the vampire elders and awaken the ancient blood god, Magra. Frost's ideology directly opposes Blade's mission, creating a classic hero vs. villain dichotomy rooted in vengeance, power, and conflicting worldviews. Act 2, rising tension and thematic development. As Blade navigates deeper into the vampire underworld, the stakes rise significantly. Frost's insurgency grows bolder, and his plan to become a god through an ancient ritual becomes clearer. Karen, meanwhile, begins working on a cure for vampirism, tying the film's biological horror to real-world science. A key turning point occurs when Whistler is captured and brutally tortured by Frost's henchmen, ultimately choosing to die by suicide to avoid turning into a vampire. This loss devastates Blade and fuels his resolve, marking a pivotal emotional climax for the protagonist. It's a moment that deepens a character's inner conflict. He is caught between his vampire nature and human heart. Blade's serum begins to fail, further increasing the tension. His physical vulnerability mirrors his emotional breakdown, highlighting themes of identity, duality, and sacrifice. Act 3, climax and transformation. In the third act, Blade is captured by Frost's forces and learns a devastating truth. His own mother is alive and has sided with Frost, now fully turned into a vampire. This revelation is both shocking and symbolic. Blade's origin, his mother's infection, comes full circle, and a betrayal deepens his personal stake in the final battle. Blade is drained of blood to complete Frost's ritual. However, with Karen's help, he drinks her blood to recover, in a moment that signifies both rebirth and acceptance of his dual nature. Blade emerges more powerful than ever, leading into the film's explosive final battle. In the climactic confrontation, Frost successfully undergoes a ritual and becomes Magra, the blood god. However, Blade ultimately defeats him using a combination of martial arts, sword combat, and Karen's anticoagulant formula, which causes Frost's body to explode from within. It's a satisfying blend of science and supernatural that ties together the film's recurring motifs. Conclusion, resolution, and continuation. The film ends with Blade sparing Karen, who offers to cure him of his vampirism. Blade declines, choosing to continue his mission, hunting vampires to protect humanity. The final shot shows him stalking a vampire in Moscow, hinting that his war is far from over. This ending delivers both closure and setup, reinforcing Blade as a lone warrior, burdened, conflicted, but driven by purpose. Narrative style and emotional impact. Blade follows a traditional three-act structure, but its strength lies in the mythology-rich world-building, the emotional resonance of its character arcs, and its genre-blending execution. The film expertly balances superhero action, vampire horror, and noir-influenced storytelling. Themes of identity, vengeance, destiny, and sacrifice thread through every plot beat. Blade's journey is not just physical, slaying vampires, but also deeply internal, confronting his past, choosing who he wants to be, and rejecting easy salvation in favor of a lonely, noble path. Conclusion. From a narrative standpoint, Blade, 1998, is both emotionally compelling and tightly constructed. While it adheres to a classic story arc, its fusion of horror, action, and superhero elements, along with its strong character development, gives it a distinct voice in both comic book cinema and vampire film history. It paved the way for darker, mature superhero stories long before the modern comic book movie boom. Narrative overview and genre framework. Blade is a genre-blending film that merges action, horror, noir, and superhero storytelling. At its core, it is a revenge-driven origin story told from a third-person perspective, and it follows a linear narrative structure with tightly structured acts, clear conflict escalation, and a climactic resolution. Unlike many experimental or non-linear superhero films, Blade ups to a conventional chronological flow, but enriches its plot with flashbacks, mythological exposition, and strong character motivation. Act 1. Origins and Exposition. You better wake up. The world you live in is just a sugar-coated topping. There is another world beneath it, the real world, and if you want to survive it, you better learn to pull the trigger. Small Blue Diamond opening flashback, the birth of a hunter. The film begins with a brief flashback to 1967, where a pregnant woman, Vanessa Brooks, is rushed into a hospital after being bitten by a vampire. She dies, seemingly, but a son is born, a child carrying the curse of the vampire without its full vulnerabilities. This child is Eric Brooks, who grows up to become Blade. This moment not only sets a tragic tone for Blade's life, but also establishes his dual identity, a man caught between two worlds. Small Blue Diamond introduction to the vampire underworld. The story jumps to modern-day America, where a man is lured into a secret underground vampire blood rave, a high-energy, neon-lit slaughterhouse. Just as he is about to be killed, Blade arrives, slicing through vampires with cold precision. He is feared even by the undead, the Daywalker. This intro acts as both world-building and character showcase. Blade isn't just a hero, he's a living myth in the vampire world. Small Blue Diamond, the mentor and the surrogate. We meet Abraham Whistler, Blade's grizzled mentor, who provides weapons, guidance, and the serum that keeps Blade's vampiric thirst in check. Blade rescues Dr. Karen Jensen, a hematologist bitten by a vampire, and she becomes a film's audience surrogate, learning the rules of this secret world. This trio, Blade, Whistler, Karen, forms the emotional backbone of the film, with each playing a role in Blade's internal conflict between monster and man. Skull Act 2, Rebellion and Loss. Small Blue Diamond enter Deacon Frost, the charismatic antagonist. Deacon Frost is introduced as a younger, more radical vampire who wasn't born into the vampire pureblood elite. He sees himself as a revolutionary and seeks to unleash the blood god Magra. Frost's rejection of tradition and lust for power sets him up as a mirror image of Blade. Both are outsiders, both hybrids of a kind, but Frost embraces evil. This is where the central ideological conflict is established. Blade seeks balance and order, Frost seeks chaos and domination. Small Blue Diamond, the blood god prophecy. Frost unearths ancient vampire scriptures and a ritual to summon Magra, who will grant him immense power. But to do it, he needs Blade's Daywalker blood, which is a missing ingredient in prophecy. This creates a personal narrative hook. Blade isn't just any vampire hunter. He's a key to ending the world. Small Blue Diamond Whistler's death, Blade's emotional breaking point. In a brutal sequence, Frost's henchmen attack Blade's lair. Whistler is captured, tortured, and left to tan. In a heartbreaking scene, Blade finds Whistler barely alive. Whistler chooses to die by suicide to avoid toning, asking Blade to finish him off. This moment is crucial. It humanizes Blade, exposes his emotional vulnerability, and cements Frost as a personal enemy, not just a global threat. Small Blue Diamond Karen's transformation. From victim to ally, Karen begins developing a vampire cure using science and vampire physiology, bringing logic and hope to an otherwise mystical war. She also discovers a new anticoagulant, EDTA, that causes vampires to explode on a cellular level, foreshadowing its use in the climax. Karen evolves from a passive victim to an active participant, even risking her life to help Blade, forming a subtle but meaningful bond. Fire Act 3, Revelations and Final Battle. Small Blue Diamond captured and drained. Blade is betrayed and captured. In a shocking reveal, his mother Vanessa is alive, now a full vampire, aligned with Frost. Frost drains Blade's blood in the final ritual to awaken Magra. This twist brings Blade's origin story full circle. The mother who gave him life now feeds the enemy he was born to destroy. It's a psychological and emotional betrayal that breaks Blade momentarily. Small Blue Diamond, the rebirth of the hero. Karen allows Blade to feed on her blood, knowing it may kill her. The act revitalizes him, rebirth through sacrifice. This sequence is symbolic. Blade fully accepts his vampire side, not as a curse, but as a weapon to protect humanity. He is no longer running from what he is. Now, he embraces it. Small Blue Diamond final confrontation with Magra. Frost, now fully transformed into Magra, is seemingly invincible. But Blade uses his EDTA serum, developed by Karen, and swordsmanship to deliver the final blow, a combination of science and strength that triumphs over ancient magic. Frost explodes in a visual spectacle, bringing closure to the blood god threat and ending his reign of terror. Clapperboard ending. The war continues. Karen offers Blade a cure for vampirism. He refuses, stating he has a mission and that the war isn't over. The final scene shows Blade in Moscow, continuing his crusade, hinting at a global vampire network. It's a classic hero rides into the sunset ending, but with an edge. Blade accepts that his life is one of isolation, service, and sacrifice, performing out's key themes in the narrative. Identity and duality. Blade is torn between the world of humans and vampires, yet he chooses his own path, a vigilante protector. Power versus purpose. Frost seeks godlike power. Blade seeks purpose in his pain. This contrast drives their conflict. Science versus superstition. Karen represents rationality. Frost represents blind devotion to prophecy. Blade stand between them, using both to survive. Loss, vengeance, and sacrifice. Blade's journey is fueled by loss of his mother, Whistler, and his humanity. But he turns that pain into power, not destruction. Pushpin final thoughts on narrative structure. Blade doesn't experiment with time or nonlinear techniques, but it succeeds through a tight, escalating narrative arc, strong character development, compelling world building, high emotional stakes paired with visceral action. It's a film that set the stage for modern superhero narratives, gritty, morally complex, and emotionally grounded. Blade out Eric Brooks, played by Wesley Snipes. I'm something else. Small Blue Diamond initial state, the reluctant anti-hero. Blade is introduced as a lethal, stoic, and emotionally distant vampire hunter, someone who operates in the shadows, feared by the very creatures he hunts. His existence is one of conflict and isolation. As a half-human, half-vampire hybrid, the Daywalker, Blade lives in limbo between two worlds. His character at the beginning is driven purely by vengeance and survival, and he suppresses both his human emotions and his vampire cravings with cold discipline. He operates like a weapon, efficient and merciless, but not entirely at peace with himself. Small Blue Diamond motivation, vengeance born of trauma. Blade's hatred for vampires is personal. Born from the death of his mother after a vampire bite, he was raised by Whistler to become a killer. But this upbringing, while purposeful, also emotionally stunted him. He doesn't allow himself connections or joy. His motivation isn't just to save others, it's to destroy what made him. This internalized trauma defines much of Blade's arc. He sees himself as a monster barely holding onto humanity, a tool for destruction rather than a person. Small Blue Diamond transformation, from weapon to protector. Over the course of the film, Blade slowly opens up, primarily through his interactions with Dr. Karen Jensen, who challenges his black-and-white worldview. Karen sees a man beneath the monster, and her compassion helps reawaken Blade's sense of purpose beyond revenge. The death of Whistler, his father figure, is the emotional breaking point that shifts Blade from reactive to proactive. No longer just a killer, he becomes a protector, accepting his hybrid nature as a strength, not a curse. When he chooses to continue fighting rather than take Karen's cure, it isn't out of self-loathing. It's a heroic sacrifice, accepting a lonely life for the greater good. Small Blue Diamond conclusion, a fully realized anti-hero. By the end of the film, Blade has evolved from a cold executioner into a mythic guardian, someone who fights not because of hate, but because of choice. His character arc is subtle yet powerful, a journey from internalized rage to embraced identity. Abraham Whistler, played by Kris Kristofferson. Catch you fuckers at a bad time. Small Blue Diamond, the mentor figure. Whistler plays a classic mentor archetype, but with a unique twist. A grizzled, cynical human who has lost his family to vampires, he dedicates his life to preparing Blade for the fight. While Whistler trains Blade to be a killer, he also acts as his moral anchor, someone who sees Blade not as a monster, but as a son. Small Blue Diamond depth through loss and loyalty. Whistler is rough-edged, sarcastic, and no-nonsense, but beneath his hardened shell lies a deep paternal love for Blade. He risks everything to support him, and his loyalty never wavers, even when he is tortured and on the brink of death. His suicide, choosing to die as a man rather than turn into a vampire, is a defining emotional moment. It reinforces his integrity and drives Blade into emotional vulnerability, pushing him toward transformation. Small Blue Diamond impact on Blade's arc. Whistler's character does not evolve much in a traditional sense, but he catalyzes Blade's evolution. His death severs Blade's last emotional tie to the human world, yet his legacy lives on in Blade's choices and determination. Dr. Karen Jensen, played by Nabushe Wright. Use me. Small Blue Diamond, the rational outsider. Karen begins as a typical damsel in distress, a hematologist bitten by a vampire and saved by Blade. But she quickly sheds that trope, becoming a key figure in the resistance against vampirism. She represents science, logic, and humanism in a world ruled by ancient mysticism and violence. Small Blue Diamond character growth, from victim to warrior. Karen's transformation is among the most compelling. She starts as a vulnerable outsider but grows into a strong, independent thinker and problem solver. She doesn't just survive. She fights back through intellect, developing a vampire cure and discovering EDTA as a weapon. Her willingness to let Blade drink her blood in a crucial moment is both symbolic and empowering, an act of self-sacrifice. Yes, but also a signal that she has accepted the harsh reality of the vampire war and chosen to fight it on her own terms. Small Blue Diamond narrative role, catalyst for Blade's humanity. Karen functions as Blade's emotional mirror. She reminds him of his humanity, challenges his belief that is beyond redemption, and helps him reconnect with empathy. While there's no romantic subplot, their bond is deep and built on trust, vulnerability, and mutual respect. Deacon Frost, played by Stephen Dorff. Let me tell you what we are. We're the top of the food chain. Small Blue Diamond, a charismatic villain with rebellious ideals. Frost is not a typical vampire villain. He is not aristocratic or ancient. He is young, ambitious, and tech-savvy, rejecting the vampire elite's traditions. He is driven by a hunger for power, but also by an ideological vision. He sees vampires not as hidden predators, but as rulers of the earth. He is a rebel and a radical, which makes him more dangerous than any elder vampire. His disrespect for the old ways mirrors Blade's own outsider status, creating a twisted parallel between hero and villain. Small Blue Diamond, lack of empathy, hunger for divinity. Frost's personality is smug, manipulative, and cruel. He doesn't want balance. He wants domination. His willingness to slaughter elders, infect Blade's mother, and sacrifice others to summon La Magra shows his sociopathic nature. He believes in pure strength, which is why his final defeat at the hands of Blade, using both intellect and combat, is a thematic rejection of his ideals. Small Blue Diamond narrative function, Blade's dark reflection. Frost's character doesn't evolve much, but his role is symbolic. He is what Blade could have become if he embraced power over purpose. In that sense, defeating Frost is not just a physical victory, it's Blade rejecting his own dark potential. # Vanessa Brooks, Blade's mother, played by Sanaa Lathan. You were born of the thirst, and it will never let you go. The ghost of Blade's past. Vanessa's brief but impactful appearance represents Blade's origin wound, his mother's death and the root of his inner rage. When revealed to be alive, now a vampire, her betrayal wounds Blade deeper than any physical injury. She sides with Frost, calling Blade a mistake and revealing the cold truth that his birth was never meant to be heroic. This moment forces Blade to let go of hope and act decisively, symbolically killing the last link to his human past. Summary of character arcs and emotional impact. Character growth changed thematic role. Blade from emotionless killer to self-aware protector duality, sacrifice, identity. Whistler remains firm but influences Blade deeply mentor, father figure, legacy. Karen Jensen from victim to empowered scientist and ally logic, humanity, hope. Deacon Frost power-hungry radical who mirrors Blade's potential downfall corruption, chaos, dark mirror. Vanessa Brooks from idealized memory to emotional betrayal trauma, past versus present. Clapperboard final thoughts. The character development in Blade, 1998, is rooted in emotional scars, identity crises, and moral dilemmas. Despite being wrapped in an action horror shell, the film offers thoughtful, layered portrayals of its main characters, especially Blade himself, whose internal struggle with his own nature drives the heart of the story. Through personal loss, betrayal, and connection, Blade evolved from a weapon of vengeance into a mythic protector, a journey that set the tone for darker, more complex superheroes in modern cinema. Wesley Snipes as Blade. I'm something else. Small Blue Diamond commanding physical presence. Wesley Snipes delivers a performance that is as physically dominant as it is emotionally restrained. With his martial art background and deep commitment to the role, Snipes portrays Blade as a warrior of few words but immense gravitas. His movements, sharp, economical, and confident, define Blade's persona as a lethal predator in a world of monsters. Every action scene becomes a character moment for Snipes, with his body language communicating a lifetime of pain, discipline, and rage. The fight choreography is not just flashy, it feels personal, as if each blow carries the weight of Blade's past. Small Blue Diamond emotional subtlety beneath stoicism. Snipes chooses not to overplay Blade's emotions, opting instead for a performance of internalized conflict. His quiet moments, looking at Whistler, confronting his mother, resisting his bloodlust, are filled with controlled tension. Rather than weeping or screaming, Blade's pain is felt in his silence, in his clenched jaw and haunted eyes. This subtle approach enhances a character's mystique and makes a few moments of vulnerability, such as drinking Karen's blood, hit harder. Snipes' ability to maintain this emotional balance helps transform Blade into a tragic antihero, not just a vampire killer. Small Blue Diamond legacy and impact. Snipes' portrayal of Blade became iconic, not just for fans of the character, but for the superhero genre as a whole. He was one of the first black actors to lead a major Marvel film, and he did so with authenticity, charisma, and intensity. His performance elevated the film from B-movie potential to cult classic status. Kris Kristofferson as Abraham Whistler. You better hope I don't turn into one of them, because I'll have to come after you. Small Blue Diamond, the rugged mentor. Kris Kristofferson brings grizzled, gravel-voiced gravitas to the role of Whistler, a hardened vampire hunter and Blade's surrogate father. His performance is marked by wild weariness, sardonic wit, and understated affection for Blade. Despite being a supporting character, Kristofferson never feels flat. His line delivery mixes cynicism with care, revealing a man shaped by loss but still clinging to a mission that matters. His chemistry with Snipes is electric, not in flashy dialogue but in shared glances, routine exchanges, and the trust that simmers beneath the surface. Small Blue Diamond standout emotional scene. Whistler's suicide scene is a dramatic highlight. Kristofferson underplays the moment, refusing melodrama. His quiet defiance and fatherly goodbye to Blade deepen the emotional core of the film, giving it an unexpected dramatic weight. His performance lingers in the viewer's memory, giving the protagonist something worth fighting for. Nabushe Wright as Dr. Karen Jensen. There's a war going on out there, and I'm going to fight it my way. Small Blue Diamond, smart, grounded, and empowering. Nabushe Wright plays Karen not as a helpless damsel, but as a woman of science and resolve. Her performance brings credibility and balance to the film. In a world filled with ancient curses and sword fights, Karen serves as the audience's anchor, and Wright makes her intelligent, skeptical, and quietly brave. She imbues Karen with a sense of agency. She doesn't just follow Blade. She questions him, pushes back, and finds her own way to contribute, especially through the scientific discovery of the vampire virus and the EDTA serum. Small Blue Diamond emotional connection without romance. While there is no overt love story between Blade and Karen, Wright builds a subtle emotional connection through trust, empathy, and shared danger. Her scenes with Snipes are emotionally loaded, particularly when she offers him her blood. And she performs it with compassion and restraint, letting the intensity speak through her eyes and tone rather than overt dramatics. Stephen Dorff as Deacon Frost. We're the future. The pure bloods are history. Small Blue Diamond, charismatic and menacing. Stephen Dorff gives a performance that walks a fine line between charming and chilling. As Deacon Frost, he is cocky, youthful, and unpredictable, the perfect contrast to the stoic and seasoned Blade. Dorff avoids the trope of the overly theatrical villain. Instead, he plays for us like a modern-day cult leader, arrogant, persuasive, and deadly. His calm exterior often explodes into violence, keeping the viewer and his victims on edge. Small Blue Diamond, symbolic performance. Dorff understands that Frost is not just a villain, his Blade's ideological opposite. Where Blade is stoic, Frost is expressive. Where Blade is bound by moral purpose, Frost believes in dominance and chaos. Dorff's ability to project quiet threat, especially in scenes with the Vampire Council or with Blade's mother, give Frost a slimy, self-righteous edge that is uniquely effective. #Sanaa Lathan as Vanessa Brooks, Blade's mother. Sanaa Lathan's screen time is limited, but her performance is impactful and emotionally charged. As Blade's long-lost mother, now turned into a vampire, she plays her role with a chilling detachment that wounds the protagonist more than any physical injury. Lathan makes Vanessa both seductive and distant, a haunting figure of betrayal. Her scenes are filled with psychological tension, especially when she calls Blade her little boy while siding with Frost. Her performance adds a layer of tragic complexity to Blade's origin and serves as a symbolic confrontation with his past. Supporting cast highlights. Udo Kier's Dragonetti. Kier plays the pureblood vampire elder with the aristocratic disdain he's famous for. His role, though brief, adds weight to the vampire hierarchy. Kier's cold, refined presence makes his execution by Frost all the more brutal. Donal Logue as Quinn. As Frost's comic yet dangerous sidekick, Quinn brings levity and menace. Logue is entertaining, unhinged, and almost cartoonishly tough to kill, a perfect counterbalance to the film's grim tone. Clapperboard final assessment of performances. Actor role performance highlights. Wesley Snipes' Blade stoic intensity, physical dominance, emotional subtlety, genre-defining performance. Kris Kristofferson Whistler grizzled warmth, mental presence, tragic emotional core. Nabushe Wright Karen Jensen grounded, intelligent, emotionally sincere, strong screen partner to Blade. Stephen Dorff Deacon Frost charismatic, arrogant, ideological villain with dark charm. Sanaa Lathan Vanessa Brooks' haunting betrayal adds psychological depth to Blade's origin. Donal Logue Quinn dark comic relief, unpredictable energy, strong physical presence in action sequences. Udo Kier Dragonetti elegant authority, symbolic of vampire elite. Bullseye conclusion. The performances in Blade, 1998, are essential to its enduring success. Wesley Snipes delivers a career-defining turn that combines martial arts mastery with internal emotional conflict, making Blade a truly iconic antihero. The supporting cast, from Kristofferson's fatherly resolve to Dorff's charismatic menace, elevate the film far beyond standard action fancy fare. These performances not only enhance the believability of the world, but give it emotional texture and thematic resonance. In a genre that often sidelined character in favor of spectacle, Blade proved that strong acting can enhance genre storytelling, making its characters as memorable as its action. Tone and mood, a gritty fusion of horror and superhero cinema. From the outset, Stephen Norrington establishes a grim, urban tone that fuses noir aesthetics with techno-gothic horror. The world of Blade is bathed in shadows, neon, and blood, a place where danger is omnipresent and morality is ambiguous. Rather than lean into camp or high fantasy, Norrington keeps the mood serious, mature, and visceral, which was a major departure from most comic book adaptations of the 1990s. The film exudes a moody intensity that permeates every frame. From the industrial clubs to the sterile vampire laboratories, all environments feel like extensions of the film's central conflict between nature and machine, man and monster. This tonal consistency enhances Blade's own identity crisis, a creature of darkness fighting to protect the light. Movie camera stylistic choices, neo-noir meets techno-action, small blue diamond visual palette. Norrington and cinematographer Theo Van de Sande craft a visually striking film. The use of contrasting colors, cold blues, metallic silvers, fiery reds, reflects the dual nature of Blade himself. The palette is often desaturated, adding to the film's oppressive atmosphere, but punctuated by vibrant blood or flickering light in key scenes, emphasizing moments of violence or revelation. Small blue diamond camera work and movement. The camera in Blade is never static without purpose. Action scenes are often shot with fluid tracking movements, rapid pans, and whip cuts, reinforcing the chaotic, high-stakes nature of Blade's world. Yet, in moments of emotional weight, such as Whistler's death or Blade's confrontation with his mother, the camera slows, holds, and breathes, allowing the emotional gravity to land. Norrington's use of close-ups helps humanize Blade despite his cold exterior, while wide shots often emphasize his isolation, a lone warrior in an overwhelming world. Small blue diamond editing rhythm. The editing, handled by Paul Rubel, reflects Norrington's controlled chaos approach. Fight scenes are fast-paced and tight, often mirroring Blade's martial art precision. However, the director is careful not to let action overwhelm coherence. Each set piece, from the opening rave to the final temple battle, is geographically clear, escalating in scale and narrative stakes. World building through direction. One of Norrington's standout achievements is the creation of a believable underground vampire society. He directs with an eye for detail, ensuring that everything from vampire language, glyphs, social hierarchy, to their dependence on human blood banks feels thought out and immersive. The contrast between vampire opulence and human decay is stark. While humans live unaware in cities riddled with crime, vampires operate in glass towers and ancient temples, revealing a hidden world governed by different rules. This duality is visualized effectively through production design, lighting, and camera framing, all guided by Norrington's world-building instincts. Cross-swords action direction, stylish yet functional. Small blue diamond martial arts with purpose. The fight choreography, tightly executed by Snipes and stunt coordinator Jeff Ward, is enhanced by Norrington's direction, who gives space and rhythm to every movement. Blade's fighting style is clean, brutal, and purposeful, and Norrington ensures that each combat sequence is character-driven. These aren't mindless brawls, they reflect Blade's mindset. For example, the opening club massacre showcases Blade as mythic and untouchable. The hallway battle after Whistler's death shows Blade as ferocious and emotionally fueled. The final battle with Frost is both personal and symbolic, using slow motion and close-ups to highlight Blade's internal acceptance of his vampire side. Small blue diamond use of sound and music. Norrington uses sound design and music as storytelling tools. The techno soundtrack, especially during action scenes, infuses a film with adrenaline and a unique late 90s flavor. This fusion of electronic music and martial arts was groundbreaking at the time, and has since become a stylistic trademark for many action films. Soundscapes in quieter scenes, like the hum of underground labs or the echoing silence of vampire temples, add to the eerie atmosphere and tension. Pacing and narrative flow. Norrington's control over pacing is notable. While the film is action-heavy, it never feels bloated. He paces the story in a way that allows world-building early on, vampire society, Blade's background. A character-driven middle act, Karen's investigation, Whistler's death. And a mythic, supernatural climax, the Magra ritual. The narrative unfolds in a three-act structure that is clear but infused with escalating stakes. Even during exposition, Norrington keeps scenes visually engaging and tonally aligned with a darker atmosphere. Narrative vision and thematic execution. Norrington's vision goes beyond action. Dorff's ability to project quiet threat, especially in scenes with the Vampire Council or with Blade's mother, gives for us a slimy, self-righteous edge that is uniquely effective. #Sanaa Lathan as Vanessa Brooks, Blade's mother. Sanaa Lathan's screen time is limited, but her performance is impactful and emotionally charged. As Blade's long-lost mother, now turned into a vampire, she plays a role with a chilling detachment that wounds the protagonist more than any physical injury. Lathan makes Vanessa both seductive and distant, a haunting figure of betrayal. Her scenes are filled with psychological tension, especially when she calls Blade her little boy while siding with Frost. Her performance adds a layer of tragic complexity to Blade's origin and serves as a symbolic confrontation with his past. Supporting cast highlights. Udo Kier as Dragonetti. Kier plays a pureblood vampire elder with the aristocratic disdain he's famous for. His role, though brief, adds weight to the vampire hierarchy. Kier's cold, refined presence makes his execution by Frost all the more brutal. Donal Logue as Quinn. As Frost's comic yet dangerous sidekick, Quinn brings levity and menace. Logue is entertaining, unhinged, and almost cartoonishly tough to kill, a perfect counterbalance to the film's grim tone. Clapperboard final assessment of performances. Actor role performance highlights. Wesley Snipes' Blade's stoic intensity, physical dominance, emotional subtlety, genre-defining performance. Kris Kristofferson Whistler grizzled warmth, mentor presence, tragic emotional core. Nabushe Wright Karen Jensen grounded, intelligent, emotionally sincere, strong screen partner to Blade. Stephen Dorff Deacon Frost charismatic, arrogant, ideological villain with dark charm. Sanaa Lathan Vanessa Brooks' haunting betrayal adds psychological depth to Blade's origin. Donal Logue Quinn dark comic relief, unpredictable energy, strong physical presence and action sequences. Udo Kier Dragonetti elegant authority, symbolic of vampire elite. Bullseye conclusion. The performances in Blade, 1998, are essential to its enduring success. Wesley Snipes delivers a career-defining turn that combines martial arts mastery with internal emotional conflict, making Blade a truly iconic anti-hero. The supporting cast, from Kristofferson's fatherly resolve to Dorff's charismatic menace, elevate the film far beyond standard action fancy fare. These performances not only enhance the believability of the world, but give it emotional texture and thematic resonance. In a genre that often sidelines character in favor of spectacle, Blade proves that strong acting can enhance genre storytelling, making its characters as memorable as its action. Tone and mood, a gritty fusion of horror and superhero cinema. From the outset, Stephen Norrington establishes a grim, urban tone that fuses noir aesthetics with techno-gothic horror. The world of Blade is bathed in shadows, neon, and blood, a place where danger is omnipresent and morality is ambiguous. Rather than lean into camp or high fantasy, Norrington keeps the mood serious, mature, and visceral, which was a major departure from most comic book adaptations of the 1990s. The film exudes a moody intensity that permeates every frame. From the industrial clubs to the sterile vampire laboratories, all environments feel like extensions of the film's central conflict between nature and machine, man and monster. This tonal consistency enhances Blade's own identity crisis, a creature of darkness fighting to protect the light. Movie camera stylistic choices, neo-noir meets techno-action, small blue diamond visual palette. Norrington and cinematographer Theo Van de Sandy craft a visually striking film. The use of contrasting colors, cold blues, metallic silvers, fiery reds, reflects the dual nature of Blade himself. The palette is often desaturated, adding to the film's oppressive atmosphere, but punctuated by vibrant blood or flickering light in key scenes, emphasizing moments of violence or revelation. Small blue diamond camera work and movement. The camera in Blade is never static without purpose. Action scenes are often shot with fluid tracking movements, rapid pans, and whip cuts, reinforcing the chaotic, high-stakes nature of Blade's world. Yet, in moments of emotional weight, such as Whistler's death or Blade's confrontation with his mother, the camera slows, holds, and breathes, allowing the emotional gravity to land. Norrington's use of close-ups helps humanize Blade despite his cold exterior, while wide shots often emphasizes isolation, a lone warrior in an overwhelming world. Small Blue Diamond editing rhythm. The editing, handled by Paul Rubel, reflects Norrington's control-chaos approach. Fight scenes are fast-paced and tight, often mirroring Blade's martial art precision. However, the director is careful not to let action overwhelm coherence. Each set piece, from the opening raid to the final temple battle, is geographically clear, escalating in scale and narrative stakes. World building through direction. One of Norrington's standout achievements is the creation of a believable underground vampire society. He directs with an eye for detail, ensuring that everything from vampire language glyphs, social hierarchy, to their dependence on human blood banks feels thought out and immersive. The contrast between vampire opulence and human decay is stark. While humans live unaware in cities riddled with crime, vampires operate in glass towers and ancient temples, revealing a hidden world governed by different rules. This duality is visualized effectively through production design, lighting, and camera framing, all guided by Norrington's world-building instincts. Cross Swords #action direction, stylish yet functional. Small Blue Diamond martial arts with purpose. The fight choreography, tightly executed by Snipes and stunt coordinator Jeff Ward, is enhanced by Norrington's direction, who gives space and rhythm to every movement. Blade's fighting style is clean, brutal, and purposeful, and Norrington ensures that each combat sequence is character-driven. These aren't mindless brawls, they reflect Blade's mindset. For example, the opening club massacre showcases Blade as mythic and untouchable. The hallway battle after Whistler's death shows Blade as ferocious and emotionally fueled. The final battle with Frost is both personal and symbolic, using slow motion and close-ups to highlight Blade's internal acceptance of his vampire side. Small Blue Diamond use of sound and music. Norrington uses sound design and music as storytelling tools. The techno soundtrack, especially during action scenes, infuses a film with adrenaline and a unique late 90s flavor. This fusion of electronic music and martial arts was groundbreaking at the time and has since become a stylistic trademark for many action films. Soundscapes in quieter scenes, like the hum of underground labs or the echoing silence of vampire temples, add to the eerie atmosphere and tension. Pacing and narrative flow. Norrington's control over pacing is notable. While the film is action-heavy, it never feels bloated. He paces the story in a way that allows world building early on, vampire society, Blade's background. A character-driven middle act, Karen's investigation, Whistler's death. And a mythic, supernatural climax, the La Magra ritual. The narrative unfolds in a 3-act structure that is clear but infused with escalating stakes. Even during exposition, Norrington keeps scenes visually engaging and tonally aligned with a darker atmosphere. Narrative vision and thematic execution. Norrington's vision goes beyond action spectacle. Oppressive, via angular shots and urban decay. Mythical, when the story leans into ritualistic vampire lore and ancient temples. The cinematography matches the film's tone beat for beat, adapting seamlessly from horror to action to tragedy, while never losing cohesion. Every visual decision enhances the emotional intensity and the mythic quality of Blade's story. Bullseye conclusion, cinematography as visual myth-making. In Blade, 1998, cinematographer Theo Van de Sande doesn't just shoot an action horror film. He crafts a stylized visual mythology. Through masterful use of lighting, angles, and framing, the cinematography establishes a unique atmosphere that blends horror, noir, and comic book fantasy. Elevates the characters by reflecting their inner conflicts visually. Supports the narrative themes of duality, isolation, and sacrifice. The result is a film that not only looks stunning but feels purposeful in every visual element, a true hallmark of genre-defining cinematography. Purpose of cinematography in Blade. In Blade, cinematography isn't just about looking cool. It builds the world, reveals character psychology, and visualizes deeper themes like isolation, duality, identity, and vengeance. The film rides a line between neo-noir and gothic horror, fused with a stylized comic book aesthetic. Theo Van de Sande uses cinematography to immerse the audience in a hyper-stylized underworld where every shadow hides a threat and every frame tells a story. New Moon Symbol 2. Lighting, building atmosphere and symbolism. Lighting in Blade is used symbolically, emotionally, and thematically. Low-key lighting dominates most scenes, especially interiors. This technique uses sharp contrast between light and shadow, reinforcing the dark, hidden vampire society and Blade's own inner conflict. Color symbolism in lighting. Large red circle red equals vampirism, blood, danger, rage, e.g., blood rave scene, final fight. Large blue circle blue or steel gray equals cold, sterile, scientific, e.g., Karen's lab, cityscapes. Amber firelight equals ancient power, ritual, magic, e.g., vampire temples. Selective highlighting. Blade is often lit just enough to show his silhouette, symbolizing the line he walked between light and darkness. Examples. In the scene where Blade discovers Whistler dying, the lighting comes from a single overhead source, casting long shadows across Whistler's face, emphasizing pain and finality. When Blade feeds on Karen, the light is dim and crimson, evoking sensuality, desperation, and internal conflict. Movie Camera 3. Camera angles and movement, emotion and action. Low-angle shots. Blade is often filmed from a low angle, giving him heroic stature and iconic silhouette. It makes him feel powerful, godlike, even when the odds are against him. High-angle shots, used to depict vulnerability, often used when humans are overpowered by vampires or when Karen is endangered. Tracking shots. Follow Blade in action sequences, allowing the audience to feel his precision and confidence. These shots are long and fluid, helping the fight choreography remain readable. Handheld camera use. In chaotic or intense moments, like the vampire autopsy or Whistler's death, the camera becomes more unstable to visually represent emotional disorientation. Slow motion, used sparingly for dramatic emphasis, especially in key kills, entrances, or moments of triumph. #4. Framing, character isolation and relationships. Symmetrical framing. Blade is frequently centered in symmetrical frames, reinforcing his control and singularity. He walks alone, physically and metaphorically. Negative space. In scenes where Blade or Karen confront the vastness of the vampire threat, they are placed at the edge of the frame, surrounded by empty or hostile space, evoking feelings of isolation and scale. Reflection in glass. Mirrors and windows are used to highlight hidden identities and divided loyalties. Blade is often framed through barriers, glass, bars, doorways, symbolizing his separation from both humans and vampires. Artist Palette 5. Color palette and visual themes. The film uses color psychology to deepen emotional and thematic impact. Black and crimson, Blade's signature aesthetic. His black leather outfit and red-tinted glasses signify his alignment with both worlds, darkness and blood. Pale white versus shadow black. Vampires are pale, sleek, and often dress in sterile white or gray, contrasting Blade's gritty, organic aesthetic. Scene-based examples. Vampire Club Blood Rave, saturated red, flashing white strobes, a sterile modernist setting turned horrific with blood, visually suggesting the disguise of elegance hiding horror. Blade's origin dream flashbacks, softened colors, vignette effects, a dreamlike haze, representing memories that haunt and define him. Bullseye 6. Scene-by-scene cinematic highlights. Down-pointing red triangle opening blood rave. Lighting, harsh reds and blacks, flickering strobes. Camera, fluid tracking into the dance floor, then chaotic handheld when the blood falls. Impact, introduces a vampire world's seductive brutality and Blade as a visual savior. His entrance is mythologized. Bed Whistler's death scene. Lighting, dim, with focused spotlights and long shadows. Framing, static shots and lingering close-ups to maximize emotional weight. Symbolism, Blade is half in light, half in shadow, emphasizing his internal fracture. Syringe Blade feeds on Karen. Lighting, blood-red glow with deep shadows. Camera, close-up, almost suffocating, makes audience feel the moral weight of Blade's choice. Theme, represents his sacrifice and desire for humanity, despite the cost. Cross Swords final fight against Deacon Frost. Camera, wide-angle, sweeping shots contrast with tight close-ups. Lighting, fiery and mystical, representing the awakening of vampire godhood and the chaos that comes with it. Symbolism, Blade is visually reforged in blood and vengeance. Camera with Flash 7. Composition, style that reflects substance. Comic book framing. The film borrows framing styles from graphic novels, sharp compositions, low angles, center-weighted heroes. Repetition of visual motifs. Blade always emerging from shadows. Vampires often reflected in polished surfaces. Diagonal lighting patterns mimicking fangs or bars. Sunglasses #8. The Blade aesthetic, a cinematic identity. Theo Van de Sandy gives Blade a signature visual identity, a look that was groundbreaking in the late 90s and went on to influence. The Matrix, 1999. Leather aesthetics, green tones, fluid action. Underworld franchise, modernized gothic vampire look. Daredevil, Batman Begins, dark palettes and stylized noir realism. 9. Conclusion, a stylized masterclass. The cinematography in Blade, 1998, goes far beyond style. It's visual storytelling with purpose. Every shadow hints at secrets. Every angle conveys power dynamics. Every color choice reveals emotional or thematic subtext. Theo Van de Sandy's work gives Blade its mythic intensity, emotional depth, and iconic status, making it one of the most visually influential action horror films of the modern era. Overall pacing and narrative rhythm. Blade, 1998, follows a tight, forward-moving narrative structure with editing that supports its dual identity as both a supernatural horror film and a high-octane action movie. The pacing is generally well-balanced, allowing the film to alternate between moments of intense kinetic action and moody world-building exposition, without losing momentum. From the moment the film begins, with the infamous blood rave sequence, the audience is pulled into a fast-paced, visually aggressive world. Yet even in slower, character-driven scenes, the editing ensures there's always a sense of tension or forward momentum, avoiding narrative stagnation. Black Scissors #2. Editing techniques, style and function. Paul Rubel's editing style in Blade emphasizes clean, readable action, a punchy rhythm, and stylized transitions that reflect the film's comic book roots. Up-pointing red triangle A action scene editing. Quick cuts with spatial clarity. Unlike many later action films that rely on chaotic, handheld camera work and rapid-fire edits, Blade uses quick cuts but ensures that audiences can follow the flow of action. Blade's martial arts combat is emphasized with medium and wide shots, and the cuts land on impact beats, reinforcing every punch, kick, or sword strike. Slow-motion beats, used sparingly but effectively to emphasize heroic moments or dramatic kills, giving audiences brief moments to absorb Blade's power and technique. These moments serve as visual exclamation marks within fight scenes. Down-pointing red triangle B transition editing. Match cuts and dissolves. The film uses match cuts and graphic fades to maintain tonal consistency, especially when switching from action sequences to quieter, dialogue-heavy scenes. These transitions maintain immersion rather than breaking it. Montage and cross-cutting. Example: when Deacon Frost repairs a ritual to become La Magra, Rubel uses cross-cutting to raise tension by showing multiple things happening in different locations. Blade preparing to fight, Karen working on a cure, Frost gathering the elders. This not only builds suspense but also reinforces that all characters are converging toward the final confrontation. Chart with upward trend 3. Rhythmic structure, acts and tempo. Small Orange Diamond Act 1, fast and expositional. The opening rave scene is a lightning-fast introduction to the world, followed by quick exposition scenes that flesh out the vampire mythology and Blade's mission. Pacing here is brisk but not overwhelming. Each scene is trimmed to essential information or character insight. Small Orange Diamond Act 2, character and world building. This is where the film slows slightly, with scenes that explore Blade's past and emotional burden, Karen's scientific investigation, Frost's philosophical views and villainous rise. These moments are slower by design, but the film avoids dragging by interspersing action, e.g., vampire autopsy ambush, Blade's warehouse fight, to re-energize viewers. Small Orange Diamond Act 3, accelerated climax. The final act picks up pace significantly. The editing becomes tighter, the cuts more rapid, and the transitions more aggressive. Blade blood-induced rebirth and subsequent battle against Frost are edited with urgency and momentum, pushing viewers toward a climactic payoff without lulls. Fire 4. Emotional impact of pacing. The editing helps sustain the emotional core of Blade's journey. For example, Whistler's suicide scene is allowed to breathe, with lingering cuts and extended silence, emphasizing grief and loss. Blade feeding on Karen is rhythmically slow, almost ritualistic, capturing the conflict between his humanity and vampirism. Such emotionally charged moments are edited to contrast with a high-energy pacing elsewhere, creating a rhythm of tension and release that mirrors Blade's internal conflict and the film's themes of duality. Crossmark 5. Are there any weak points? While Blade is largely well-paced, there are minor critiques. Some middle section sequences, such as Frost's boardroom politics, can feel slightly extended compared to the sharp editing of the action scenes. However, these moments are necessary for exposition and setup. Certain VFX transitions, particularly those involving Frost's blood god transformation, show their age and may briefly interrupt the otherwise tight rhythm due to visual inconsistency. But these are technical, not editorial, issues. 6. Editing as storytelling tool. Rubel's editing does more than create flow. It also tells a story visually. Blade's transformation from warrior to sacrificial hero is mirrored in the increasingly efficient and aggressive editing style. As his urgency grows, so too does the speed of the cuts and the brevity of scene transitions. Foreshadowing and flashbacks are strategically placed, e.g., glimpses of Blade's mother, to emotionally prime the audience for future reveals. White have a checkmark 7. Conclusion, a blueprint for stylish action editing. The editing in Blade, 1998, is a key component of its cult status and cinematic impact. Paul Rubel crafts a film that is stylish yet readable, fast-paced yet emotionally grounded, modern and slick without sacrificing substance. By combining sharp action rhythms, fluid transitions, and deliberate pacing shifts, the editing ensures Blade is not only engaging from start to finish, but also a foundational template for action horror storytelling in the years to follow. Would you like this converted into a YouTube video script or broken into sections for narration and visual cues, e.g., clips from key scenes? I can also add timestamps or bullet points for easier video editing. Editorial purpose and narrative control. In Blade, the editing functions not just to trim scenes or ensure continuity, but as a narrative compass. Editor Paul Rubel crafts the film's rhythm to align with the emotional states of its protagonist, narrative urgency, and tonal shifts. Editing here is a silent storyteller, guiding, revealing, withholding, and escalating. The edit structure supports a 3-act format, but the internal pace of each act varies intentionally, reflecting the genre blend action, horror, comic book fantasy, and tragedy. Joystick #2. Scene-specific analysis, micro-editing decisions. Let's break down some iconic sequences to highlight editing impact. Large red circle blood rave sequence, opening scene. Pacing, fast-paced, with jump cuts to simulate chaos and emotion into the vampire underworld. Editorial rhythm. Edit sync with a techno beat, rhythmic cross-cutting between the crowd, the DJ, blood sprinklers, and the terrified human victim. Purpose. Creates adrenaline, foreshadows Blade's explosive entrance, and thrusts the viewer into the film's unique vampire mythology. Cross swords Blade versus police ambush. Cutting pattern. Quick, clean edits show Blade dispatching foes with clinical precision. Temporal manipulation. Intercuts with Karen's panic and rising tension. Time stretches and compresses, dictated by emotion rather than realism. Spatial orientation. Maintain clarity of Blade's movements through consistent match-on-action cuts, crucial in a martial arts-heavy scene. Syringe Blade's blood rejuvenation scene. Editing tone shift, from frantic action to slow, sensual, almost ritualistic pacing. Contrast. This sharp change in tempo accentuates the weight of Blade's desperation and animalistic hunger. Symbolism in cuts. Each cut lingers on the moral implications. Karen's choice, Blade's suffering, and the intimate horror of vampiric nature. Bar chart 3. Macro structure, act-wise pacing and flow. High voltage sign Act 1, high-octane introduction. Tone, urgent and violent. Each scene has a tight focus, no wasted moments. Purpose, establish Blade's world, his methods, and the hierarchy of the vampire underworld. Transitioning. Editing ensures narrative economy. Scenes leap from conflict to explanation without lingering too long. Left-pointing magnifying glass Act 2, world building and moral exploration. Pace, moderately slower to allow exploration of. Vampire genetics, Karen's subplot. Blade's origin story. Whistler's deteriorating condition. Risk. This lower section could have dragged, but Rubel maintains tension by inserting mini-action set pieces, like the vampire autopsy ambush, to punctuate the quiet. New Moon Symbol Act 3, escalation to final confrontation. Pacing strategy. Cuts become more frequent as the climax builds. Scene overlap. Intercuts in between alarm Magra ritual, Karen's escape, and Blade's reawakening intensifies viewer engagement. Rhythm management. Each storyline is edited to reach its climax simultaneously, giving the finale a symphonic structure. Performing arts 4. Emotional and psychological rhythm. Rubel masterfully uses editorial tempo to mirror Blade's internal conflict. Blade's emotional moments, like Whistler's death or his mother's betrayal, feature longer, lingering takes, allowing emotion to breathe. Moments of inner rage or combat instinct are intercut with sharp cuts, mimicking his adrenaline and clarity in battle. This dual rhythm represents a duality of Blade's identity, half human, slow, emotive edits, versus half vampire, fast, instinct-driven cuts. Level slider #5. Editorial synergy with other departments. Editing doesn't work in isolation. In Blade, it's deeply intertwined with musical note music. The techno or industrial soundtrack, scored by Mark Isham, is rhythmically aligned with the editing. In action scenes, cuts often land on beat, reinforcing visual music harmony. During emotional beats, music shifts to ambient or orchestral tones, and the editing slows down accordingly to create emotional space. Electric light bulb cinematography, edited with respect to Dan Lawson's lighting schemes. Example: the sewer ambush scene uses flickering lights and fire. Editing adapts to this environment by slowing down in moments of darkness and speeding up in bursts of light or fire-based choreography. Visual effects. The VFX-heavy transformation scenes, especially La Magra's, are edited with cut-ins to reaction shots to hide VFX limitations and maintain momentum. Hammer and wrench #6. Technical craft, editing tools, and language. J-cuts and L-cuts, frequently used for seamless scene transitions where dialogue or sound precedes or follows a visual cut. This technique softens tonal changes and helps scenes bleed into each other naturally. Whip pans and hard cuts, used in flashback scenes, Blade dreams, and fight transitions to imply urgency and psychological disturbance. Cutting on motion, maintains visual flow even during rapid sequences. 7. Pacing impact on audience engagement. The result of this meticulous editing is a film that never feels slow, even when delivering exposition. Audiences are constantly engaged, either visually, emotionally, or viscerally. The balance between high-speed action and emotionally charged stillness creates a pacing rhythm that's both satisfying and rewatchable. White Heavy Checkmark 8. Conclusion: a case study in action horror editing. The editing in Blade, 1998, is one of its most underappreciated strengths. Paul Rubel crafts a layered experience through narrative fluidity, emotional rhythm control, precision in action, balanced tempo shifts, dynamic integration with sound and visuals. It's a masterclass in genre-blending editorial strategy, helping Blade stand tall not just as a superhero film, but as a pioneering entry in the modern action horror canon. Blade, 1998. Soundtrack and score analysis. Score by Mark Isham. Soundtrack includes hip-hop, techno, drum and bass, and industrial tracks by various artists. #1. Tone setting, a hybrid sonic world. From the very first scene, Blade establishes a distinct audio identity that is aggressive, dark, and stylish, a perfect match for its vampire meets superhero hybrid tone. The film score and soundtrack act as dual forces. The original score by Mark Isham provides a moody, atmospheric undercurrent, leaning on ambient textures, deep basses, and orchestral dread. The soundtrack, on the other hand, injects energy through electronic, techno, hip-hop, and industrial beats, helping to define the film's visual style and urban attitude. Together, they work in perfect synergy, building a sonic world that feels dangerous, seductive, and mythic. Fire 2. Opening blood rave scene, a musical statement. The film opens with an iconic nightclub sequence featuring New Order's Confusion, pump panel reconstruction mix. This pulsating techno track is not only memorable but serves a storytelling function. The repetitive beat mirrors the hypnotic, ritualistic feel of the vampire rave. As the blood rains down and chaos erupts, the music becomes a character in itself, controlling the rhythm of cuts, camera movement, and action choreography. This scene immediately tells the audience this is not a traditional comic book film. It's gritty, stylized, and electronically charged. This track became synonymous with Blade's cinematic identity and is still referenced in modern media as one of the most iconic openings in action horror. Violin 3. Mark Isham score. Gothic minimalism meets urban cool. Composer Mark Isham crafts a score that walks a tightrope between orchestral Gothic horror elements, low strings, haunting ambient layers, electronic pulse and synth-driven tones reflective of late 90s techno culture. This blend is subtle but crucial. Isham's compositions are less about melodic themes and more about texture, atmosphere, and pacing. Key functions of the score. World building. Isham's use of ambient tones and soft tribal percussion in quieter moments give the vampire world a mythic, ancient feel. Tension building. Rather than bombastic cues, Isham favors rising drones and dissonant pulses to build tension, especially in scenes like Karen's lab discoveries or Blade confrontations with Deacon Frost. Emotional underscoring. Moments like Whistler's final scene or Blade's tragic realization about his mother are given emotional weight through slow, mournful string progressions. These are understated but effective. Explosion symbol 4. Action scenes. Syncing music with movement. In action scenes, the score and soundtrack blur the line. Isham's cues are often layered into industrial or techno beats, ensuring that the pace of fights feels musical, not just physical. Momentum builds organically from one beat to the next, keeping viewers engaged without overwhelming them. Examples include the Blade vs. Vampire Minions fight in the archives. Score and beat-driven soundtrack rise in parallel, making each hit, stab, and explosion feel rhythmic and choreographed. The La Magra ritual incorporates both orchestral intensity and primal percussion, creating a sense of supernatural crescendo. 5. Motifs and recurring elements. Though Blade doesn't have a singular theme like many modern superhero films, it does rely on recurring sound motifs. A low electronic pulse often follows Blade's presence or approach, acting almost like a heartbeat. This creates anticipation. Echoed metallic sounds, akin to sword clashes or chain links, often appear during transitions into vampire scenes, subtly enhancing the supernatural tone. Silence as a tool. In emotional or suspenseful moments, the score often pulls back entirely, allowing the ambient sound or dialogue to breathe. This creates contrast and draws more attention when the music returns. Headphone 6. Soundtrack highlights and cultural relevance. The official soundtrack, released alongside the film, featured tracks from Mystical, Mobb Deep, Gang Starr, Junkie XL, Tricky, Fatboy Slim, and more. This curated selection reflected not just musical trends of the time, but helped place Blade within a cool, urban cultural frame, appealing to a younger, edgier demographic. Notable uses. Deadly Zone by Mobb Deep Feet Bounty Killer enhances the gritty tone of vampire street violence. The blend of hip-hop and electronic reflects Blade's duality, old-world vampire lore versus new-age urban warrior. Musical score 7. Balance and integration. One of the soundtrack's greatest strengths is restraint. Despite its heavy genre elements, the music never overpowers the storytelling. The score is not overly melodic, which allows the visuals and performances to lead. Techno and hip-hop tracks are used sparingly, ensuring they hit harder when they appear. This balance helps Blade avoid the trap of becoming style over substance. Instead, the music serves as an amplifier for emotional tension, world immersion, and action energy. 8. Psychological and emotional impact. Music in Blade also operates on a subconscious level, particularly during moments of internal conflict. Blade's struggle with his vampire urges is often accompanied by low, distorted notes, reflecting his inner torment. Emotional scenes aren't underscored with melodrama. Instead, minimalist cues allow the silence and tension to speak volumes. This enhances audience empathy and builds deeper emotion, particularly in tragic or morally ambiguous moments. White Heavy Checkmark 9. Conclusion, an iconic sonic identity. The soundtrack and score of Blade 1998 are vital components of its success and legacy. Mark Isham's subtle yet intense score gives the film atmosphere, emotion, and momentum. The bold, electronic-heavy soundtrack infuses the film with energy, attitude, and cultural edge. The music's careful placement, rhythmic alignment with editing, and emotional restraint help the film transcend the limits of a traditional comic book movie. In many ways, Blade's Sonic World laid the foundation for the modern superhero aesthetic that would follow in films like The Matrix, Underworld, and even The Dark Knight. Blade, 1998, Themes and Messages Analysis. Directed by Stephen Norrington and based on the Marvel Comics character, Blade isn't just a stylish vampire action film. It is a multi-layered narrative rich in subtext and thematic depth. Beneath its brutal action and gothic visuals, the film wrestles with issues of identity, duality, power, prejudice, morality, and destiny. Cross-Swords #1. Dual identity and internal conflict. At the heart of Blade is a central theme of duality, the constant struggle between human and monster, good and evil, and instinct and morality. Blade himself is a living embodiment of this tension. Born half human, half vampire, Blade exists between two worlds, accepted by neither. He possesses the strengths of vampires, but is plagued by their thirst for blood, which he resists through serum injections and iron-willed discipline. This condition is symbolic of internal conflict, mirroring struggles of addiction, emotional repression, or cultural alienation. Blade's refusal to fully embrace either side makes him a tragic figure, one who fights against what he is in order to protect who he wishes to be. This theme resonates with viewers who feel like outsiders or those battling inner demons. 2. Prejudice, power hierarchies, and otherness. The vampire world in Blade is a structured, elitist society with clear hierarchies, mirroring real-world systems of privilege and oppression. The pure-blood vampires, born into their power, look down upon turned vampires and humans, believing in superiority through bloodline. Deacon Frost, a turned vampire, challenges the elitist system, advocating for domination over humans, not coexistence, a message of revolution twisted into extremism. Blade, as a hybrid, is considered an abomination by both sides, rejected by vampires for being impure, and feared by humans for what he represents. This reflects the experience of the marginalized, those who belong nowhere, those forced to prove their worth in a system designed to exclude them. The film subtly critiques racism, classism, and purity-based ideologies through its vampire lore. 3. Science versus superstition. Another powerful theme explored in Blade is the intersection of science and the supernatural. Karen, a hematologist, represents the rational, scientific perspective, trying to understand and cure vampirism through biology. The vampire mythos in the film is treated as a disease rather than mysticism, allowing characters to approach it with logic, medicine, and research. However, ancient rituals, prophecy, La Magra, and vampire lore still maintain power, suggesting that some forces lie beyond human comprehension. This tension between science and faith is central to the film's narrative arc, ultimately implying that both are needed to confront evil. It also positions Blade as a fusion of both worlds, a scientifically enhanced being fighting an ancient, supernatural enemy. #4. Isolation, sacrifice, and the burden of heroism. Blade's journey is a study in isolation. He is alone in his purpose, with only Whistler and later Karen as allies, burdened with protecting a world that doesn't understand or accept him, haunted by the loss of his mother, which becomes more painful when she is revealed to be alive, and aligned with the enemy. His story echoes the archetype of the reluctant, tragic hero, one who sacrifices personal happiness for the greater good. This resonates with the classic hero's journey, but it's painted in darker tones. There is no glory in Blade's war, only pain, blood, and loss. He remains a guardian in the shadows, unsung and misunderstood, making his heroism more selfless and, ironically, more human. This theme elevates a film above standard action fare, giving it emotional weight and moral gravitas. 5. Blood as symbol. Blood is more than just a horror trope in Blade. It's a central motif symbolizing power. Vampires depend on blood to survive. The more they consume, the stronger they become. Lineage and identity. Blade's powers stem from the vampiric blood passed on during his mother's attack, making it the source of both trauma and strength. Temptation and control. Blade's constant resistance to drinking human blood is symbolic of addiction, restraint, and moral choice. The film uses blood both literally and metaphorically to explore the cost of power, the pain of transformation, and the struggle for control over one's nature. Coffin #6. Revenge versus justice. Blade's motivations are layered. While he fights a humanity, his personal vendetta against vampires is also driven by the death of his mother, his transformation into a hybrid, years of trauma and social rejection. The film challenges the viewer to ask, is Blade driven by justice or vengeance? His discipline and compassion, especially in sparing innocents, suggest heroism, but his coldness and emotional wall suggest that his war is deeply personal. This ambiguity gives the story moral complexity, painting Blade not as a typical savior, but a man trying to channel his rage into something righteous. 7. The dangers of extremism and ego. Deacon Frost's arc embodies the dangers of ego, extremism, and ideological obsession. Frost believes in wiping out humanity to create a vampire-ruled Earth, a supremacist ideology under the guise of revolution. His obsession with becoming La Magra represents the lust for godlike power, no matter the cost. His downfall comes from his refusal to listen, empathize, or restrain himself, making him a cautionary tale of what happens when ambition overrides wisdom. 8. Reflections on humanity. Ironically, the most human character in the film is Blade himself, not because of his biology, but because of his choices. He resists the darkness within, showing willpower. He saves humans, even when they fear him. He expresses empathy, grief, and sacrifice, qualities lacking in the vampires, despite their human form. This raises a subtle yet powerful message. Humanity is not defined by blood, but by choice. 9. Conclusion, a thematic powerhouse beneath the surface. Though often celebrated for its action, visual style, and genre influence, Blade, 1998, is just as impressive for its thematic sophistication. From exploring identity and alienation to challenging power structures, morality, and self-control, the film communicates its messages effectively and organically through character, conflict, and visual metaphor. Its lasting impression lies in how it speaks to those on the margins, those fighting inner demons, and those who choose discipline over instinct, even when the world offers no gratitude in return. Blade, 1998, Visual Effects and CGI. Released in the pre-Matrix era of Hollywood, Blade, 1998, was a landmark film that helped shape the modern superhero genre, not just through its dark tone and stylized action, but also through its innovative and ambitious use of visual effects, CGI, and practical makeup work. While some of its digital elements have aged, others remain impressively integrated, helping to bridge the gap between traditional effects and emerging computer-generated imagery in late 90s cinema. Personal computer early CGI integration, ambition beyond the budget. At a time when CGI was still evolving, Blade pushed technological boundaries within its relatively modest budget of approximately $45 million. The film uses CGI most prominently in vampire disintegration sequences, where enemies burst into ash when staked, blood god ritual effects in the climactic scene, regeneration and transformation effects, particularly involving Deacon Frost and the La Magra entity. These effects were cutting-edge for 1998 and added a visceral style to the vampire deaths that made them stand out from traditional creature features. The ash-dissolving effect, for instance, became a visual trademark of the franchise. However, in retrospect, some of the CGI appears dated, especially during the climactic blood whirlwind sequences, which can feel cartoonish by modern standards. Deacon Frost's digital body inflation and explosion, which suffers from early CGI texture and lighting issues. Despite these limitations, at the time of release, such visuals were considered exciting and revolutionary, making Blade one of the early films to show CGI-enhanced action in a superhero. Setting, practical effects and makeup, the true highlight. Where Blade truly excels is in its practical effects and prosthetics, which lend the film a gritty, physical texture. The vampire's fangs, wounds, burns, and mutations are convincingly rendered with prosthetics. The grotesque creature Pearl, the obese archivist vampire, is a brilliant example of makeup and animatronic ingenuity, a scene that left lasting impression for its grotesque realism. Blood effects, including gushing wounds, spurting arteries, and gore, are achieved with practical squibs and prosthetics, adding to the film's grindhouse-like violence. These physical effects keep the film grounded and tactile, allowing the audience to feel the impact of Blade's violence in ways that CGI alone couldn't replicate at the time. Blending practical and digital. One of the film's strengths is how it seamlessly blends practical and digital effects for a cohesive aesthetic. When Blade stabs or decapitates a vampire, the physical choreography is complemented by CG-esque disintegration, creating a stylized yet believable effect. During the blood ritual scene, practical effects, fake blood, lighting are enhanced by swirling digital elements to sell the supernatural scale of the transformation. The integration was not flawless. Occasional mismatched lighting and texture inconsistencies can pull viewers out of the immersion, but the visual rhythm between digital and physical effects was well balanced for its time. Stylized action, visual effects as a tool of world building. More than just spectacle, the visual effects in Blade serve the story and tone effectively. They help define the vampire mythos unique to this universe, where death by sunlight or silver causes explosive, magical reactions. The effects emphasize the power gap between Blade and average vampires, reinforcing his legendary status. The use of slow motion, dynamic camera movement, and blood-splashing effects enhances a comic book feel, even though the film stays grounded in a dark, urban aesthetic. This use of stylization set Blade apart from other horror action hybrids and laid the groundwork for more visually ambitious comic book films like X-Men 2000 and Spider-Man 2002. Limitations and legacy. While some digital effects in Blade feel primitive by today's standards, especially in high definition, they rarely undermine the film's intensity or atmosphere. In fact, the boldness of its experimentation is part of its charm. The film's visual effects contributed to a new standard for vampire cinema, combining modern digital enhancement with classic horror craftsmanship. It also foreshadowed the CGI-heavy future of superhero and fantasy films, where even grounded stories would incorporate visual flair. White-heavy checkmark conclusion, imperfect yet pioneering. In summary, Blade 1998 uses its visual effects and CGI not merely as gimmicks, but as an essential storytelling tool. Though some moments may appear outdated, the film remains a benchmark in the evolution of visual effects in action horror cinema. Its success lies in its balance between practical realism and stylized digital imagination, helping establish a unique cinematic world that remains iconic even decades later. The film's VFX may not always be invisible, but they are bold, atmospheric, and highly effective in enhancing the genre-blending world that Blade dared to create. Blade 1998, set design and locations. Blade 1998 delivers a visually immersive world where gothic horror, urban grit, and stylized action coexist. Through its production design, set choices, and location scouting, the film constructs a dark, believable universe that perfectly aligns with its vampire noir aesthetic. The settings aren't just backgrounds, they are narrative tools that enhance the story's mood, tone, and mythology. Cityscape at dusk urban gothic aesthetic, a vampire world hidden in plain sight. Set primarily in a gritty, stylized version of Los Angeles, Blade presents a city that operates in duality. On the surface, it's a modern urban environment, but underneath, a shadow world controlled by vampires thrives. This jewel-layered cityscape is brought to life with locations and sets that emphasize dark alleyways, underground clubs, ancient vampire archives, run-down warehouses, sterile laboratories and medical rooms. The contrast between these elements reinforces the central theme of the film, that an ancient evil walks among the modern world, invisible to the average person. The Vampire Nightclub, a brutal introduction. One of the most memorable sets in the film is the Bloodbath nightclub, which opens the movie with a shocking, unforgettable scene. This location is drenched in strobe lights, industrial music, and an unholy rain of blood from overhead sprinklers. Its design evokes a feeling of a secret vampire haven masquerading as a rave, blends industrial grunge with ritualistic undertones, introduces the film's tone, brutal, stylish, and unapologetically dark. This club is not only visually arresting, but also immediately immerses the audience into Blade's world, where blood and death are celebrated by the supernatural elite. Office building Deacon Frost lay and corporate vampire environments. The set design for Deacon Frost's headquarters is particularly noteworthy. Instead of dwelling in crumbling castles like traditional vampires, Frost resides in modern glass towers, minimalist interiors, high-tech rooms used for rituals and experiments. This choice modernizes a vampire myth, portraying them as corporate overlords who've adapted to and manipulated modern systems. It makes their world more threatening because it suggests their power is woven into contemporary institutions. Additionally, the records room guarded by Pearl, the grotesquely bloated vampire archivist, is a set that mixes grotesque horror with ancient mysticism. This hidden chamber, layered with scrolls and archaic texts, adds historical depth to the vampire mythology and contrasts sharply with Frost's modern aesthetic. Blade's hideout and laboratory. Blade's hideout, shared with his mentor Whistler, is a key environment that reflects a character's dual nature. It's a grimy, industrial garage, packed with weapons, UV lamps, and vampire hunting gear. It also contains a functional laboratory, showcasing Blade's reliance on science and technology to survive. The set here emphasizes Blade's outsider status. He doesn't belong in the vampire world, nor in the human one. The utilitarian, metallic design reinforces his identity as a soldier in a never-ending war. Classical building has the Temple of La Magra, climactic Gothic grandeur. For the film's final act, the story shifts from urban decay to ancient grandeur. The Temple of La Magra, where Deacon Frost attempts to become the blood god, is one of the film's most ambitious sets. Its design includes stone altars, vampiric glyphs carved into walls, dark catacombs illuminated by torches. This setting pays homage to classic horror iconography with a modern twist. It feels grand, mythical, and appropriate for a supernatural climax. The contrast between this ancient space and the film's modern urban settings underscores the long history and spiritual threat posed by the vampire world. Fire lighting and set atmosphere. Across all locations, lighting is used masterfully to enhance a production design. Green hues, neon lights, and deep shadows dominate urban scenes, evoking a cyberpunk horror blend. Backlighting and silhouettes create a sense of danger and power around Blade. The consistent use of low-light environments reflects the vampire's preference for darkness and reinforces a tone of secrecy and dread. The cinematography works hand-in-hand with set design to create a world that feels both expansive and claustrophobic, filled with dark corners, hidden chambers, and looming threats. Props and set dressing. Smaller details also contribute meaningfully. Blade's weapons, including his sword, stakes, UV bombs, and custom-made guns, are meticulously crafted and stored in visually striking displays. Medical equipment and vials of serum make the lab scenes feel authentic. Scrolls, ancient symbols, and vampire relics populate the temple and archive rooms, grounding the vampire lore in tangible history. These props are not just decorative, they are extensions of the characters and the world's rules. Whiteheaver checkmark conclusion, a world both real and mythical. The set design and location work in Blade, 1998, masterfully blend the old and the new, creating a universe that feels both real and mythological. The careful contrast between urban decay and ancient vampire legacy enhances the film's central themes of duality, secrecy, and war between worlds. By crafting immersive environments, from gritty nightclubs to Gothic temples, Blade successfully brings comic book fantasy into the real world, setting the stage for future superhero films that would rely heavily on their worlds feeling lived in and textured. It's not just that Blade looks good, it feels authentic, grounded, and threatening. The production design ensures that every scene contributes to the atmosphere, mythos, and momentum of a narrative. Blade, 1998. Dialogue and script. The script of Blade, 1998, penned by David S. Goyer, strikes a compelling balance between action-driven storytelling, world-building exposition, and character-defining dialogue. As a late 90s superhero horror hybrid, the film relies on tight, impactful lines to develop its mythos, inject style, and deepen its protagonist's brooding presence. The dialogue is punchy, stylized, and often iconic, reflecting the gritty tone and the stoic nature of its lead character while supporting the film's larger-than-life themes. #character-specific dialogue, Blade's stoicism and cool factor. Wesley Snipes' portrayal of Blade is driven by an economy of words. His lines are minimalistic, but each one is designed to leave a strong impression. Blade's dialogue is not verbose, but instead functions through sharp, clipped sentences, often punctuated by grim humor or deadpan delivery. This not only aligns with his lone wolf persona, but also makes his few words feel weighty. White heavy checkmark iconic lines. Some mother asteriskers are always trying to ice skate uphill. Asterisk asterisk. This line, delivered by Blade just before the film's climax, has become legendary among fans. It encapsulates a character's ironic detachment and the movie's blend of pulp and swagger. You better wake up. The world you live in is just a sugar-coated topping. There's another world beneath it, the real world. This is one of Blade's early pieces of exposition, setting the tone and laying down the film's secret war premise in a memorable and almost prophetic way. Blade's speech often reflects his internalized trauma, moral conflict, and relentless mission, but it does so with restraint. He is a man of few words, and that amplifies the impact when he does speak. World building through exposition. The film's dialogue does a significant amount of world building, especially through characters like Whistler and Deacon Frost. While there's exposition present, it's generally delivered organically within the flow of conversation, not forced as clunky info dumps. Whistler, for example, provides historical context about vampires, Blade condition, and their weapons in a rough, sarcastic tone that makes the dialogue feel natural and grounded. Deacon Frost, on the other hand, uses eloquent, provocative language to reflect his rebellion against vampire elders and his megalomania. His speeches, especially when debating with the Vampire Council, are laced with youthful arrogance, ambition, and ideology. You know the problem with your kind? You're too stuffy. You want to live forever, but you're not willing to make the necessary sacrifices. This line reveals for us core philosophy, his desire to disrupt the vampire status quo and embrace chaos to gain power. Sharp wit and verbal sparring. While Blade is a dark, often violent film, there's a layer of dark humor and sarcastic wit embedded in the script, particularly in interactions between Blade and Whistler or Blade and his enemies. These lines serve as tension breakers while also reinforcing character dynamics. Whistler calling Blade a damn fool or cracking jokes while fixing him up brings a father-son chemistry to their relationship, showing warmth through tough love. Karen, the hematologist caught in the crossfire, brings scientific realism to the dialogue. Her skeptical, logical approach balances Blade's mysticism and helps ground the story in pseudoscience rather than full fantasy. Speech balloon tone and consistency. The tone of the dialogue remains consistent throughout, dark, urgent, and stylized. It avoids over-explanation or melodrama, which could have made the film feel cheesy or outdated. Instead, it opts for a lean script that keeps the pace moving while preserving the film's serious, no-nonsense tone. Even when exploring complex ideas, like the hybrid nature of Blade's physiology or the ritual to summon La Magra, the film handles it with efficient language that serves both narrative clarity and character motion. Performing art's emotional and narrative impact. While Blade is primarily an action horror film, there are pockets of emotional weight in the dialogue that reveal the character's inner struggles. Blade's suppressed pain and humanity are hinted at in scenes with Karen, especially when she questions his constant use of serum or when she offers to help him medically. Whistler's final moments are minimalist but gut-punching. He refuses sentimentality, saying, "Give him hell, kid." It's simple, powerful, and emotionally resonant. Karen's confrontation with the vampire world and a gradual trust in Blade is conveyed through clear, realistic dialogue, which allows the audience to anchor themselves in her perspective. Bullseye conclusion, a script that cuts like a blade. The dialogue in Blade, 1998, is as sharp as a protagonist's weapon. It combines memorable one-liners, tight exposition, and emotionally resonant exchanges to create a screenplay that remains iconic in the superhero horror genre. The writing does not try to be overly poetic or theatrical. It instead aims for punch, rhythm, and character authenticity. Whether it's Blade's cold fury, Whistler's gruff wisdom, or Frost's revolutionary arrogance, every character speaks in a way that reflects their worldview. And while the script is minimalistic, mirroring the film's brutal yet stylish tone, Blade, 1998, genre execution. Blade, 1998, directed by Stephen Norrington and written by David S. Goyer, is a landmark film in the hybridization of superhero, horror, action, and sci-fi genres. Released before the modern superhero boom, Blade did not follow the typical cape and cow formula. Instead, It carved out its own unique identity, blending martial arts spectacle with gothic horror aesthetics and sci-fi biothriller elements, creating a genre-defining experience that subverted conventions of both vampire films and comic book adaptations. #vampire horror with a superhero twist. At its core, Blade is a vampire film, and it retains many of the classic tropes of the genre. Secret vampire societies, blood rituals, ancient hierarchies, and the eternal battle between humans and the undead. However, it boldly subverts the typical vampire formula by placing a vampire hybrid as a protagonist who hunts his own kind. Unlike traditional vampire horror, which leans into dread, atmosphere, and gothic melancholy, Blade injects superhero empowerment and kinetic energy into the narrative. This repositioning of the vampire mythos from the realm of horror into a slick, action-heavy arena was not just fresh, it was genre-redefining. Blade himself, a half-human, half-vampire daywalker, isn't just a monster or victim. He's a heroic anti-hero, akin to Batman or Wolverine, who uses his condition as a weapon rather than a curse. This twist repositions the vampire genre from tragedy to action-revenge fantasy, flipping expectations in a compelling way. Martial arts uniform action and martial arts excellence. In terms of action genre execution, Blade excels. The film opens with a stunning nightclub massacre sequence that combines stylized gunplay, martial arts, and practical effects. The choreography is reminiscent of Hong Kong cinema and anime-influenced movement, which was relatively rare in Hollywood at the time. Blade's fighting style, weapon use, silver stakes, UV bombs, swordplay, and acrobatics placed the film squarely in modern action cinema, years before The Matrix revolutionized the genre. The action isn't just stylish, it's character-driven. Blade fights with calculated rage and precision, matching his stoic personality. The action sequences are not just visual spectacle but serve narrative progression, showing Blade's relentlessness, vulnerability as his serum weakens, and inner torment. Science fiction elements. Blade weaves in science fiction tropes, particularly through its biomedical angle. The film explores Blade's need for serum to suppress his vampiric thirst, positioning vampirism as a kind of virus or genetic mutation. This quasi-scientific reinterpretation of vampire mythology adds a layer of plausibility and tension, especially with the subplot of Karen, the hematologist trying to find a cure. These sci-fi elements ground the film in a real-world what-if scenario, allowing the story to appeal to fans of both horror fantasy and near-future thrillers. This fusion of myth and science was ahead of its time and foreshadowed similar blends in later comic book adaptations. Smiling Face Withhorn's villainy with depth, the rebellion against tradition. Deacon Frost, the film's antagonist, is another genre subversion. He is not the traditional aristocratic vampire, like Dracula or the elders on the Vampire Council. He's a young, brash upstart who seeks to overthrow the ancient order. His cyberpunk attitude, techno-savvy mindset, and hunger for power represent the youthful, chaotic villain archetype, contrasting Blade's disciplined, seasoned demeanor. Frost's plan to become La Magra, the blood god, adds an epic fantasy horror angle, layering mythic stakes on top of the street-level action. This fusion of ancient prophecy with modern techno-horror makes the villain's plot uniquely positioned in multiple genres at once. Drama and pathos without melodrama. While not a character drama in the conventional sense, Blade introduces emotional weight through Blade's internal struggle, his hatred for vampires conflicting with his own blood. His relationship with Whistler also grounds the film emotionally, adding father-son dynamics that elevate moments of sacrifice and vulnerability. Karen, as the audience surrogate, brings realism and empathy, giving the story a human center amidst supernatural chaos. The film avoids melodrama, keeping emotional moments brief and impactful, ensuring the pacing never slows, but the stakes still feel personal. Smiling Face with Sunglasses style, humor, and cool factor. The film exudes late 90s coolness, leather trench coats, techno soundtrack, slow motion, and quotable one-liners. While Blade is mostly serious in tone, it contains dry humor and grim wit that emerge naturally through characters like Whistler or Blade's deadpan one-liners. These moments provide levity without compromising the gritty tone. Rather than being campy or overly self-aware, the humor feels earned and character consistent, particularly in Blade's badass demeanor and Whistler's sarcastic charm. Scroll conventional versus experimental structure. Blade does follow a conventional 3-act structure. Act 1. Introduction of Blade, Karen, and the vampire underworld. Act 2. Investigating Frost's plan and developing the Blade-Karen alliance. Act 3. Confrontation and final battle against Frost and La Magra. However, the genre mixing and stylization keep it feeling unconventional in tone and delivery. The use of blood rituals, high-concept mythology, and sci-fi action hybridization makes it feel like more than a standard action film or horror flick. Checkered flag conclusion, a groundbreaking genre fusion. In terms of genre execution, Blade, 1998, does not just follow conventions, it reinvents them. It took bold risks by mixing gothic horror with martial arts action, injecting